The council chamber always smelled like sterilized marble and old arrogance. Its walls were polished until they reflected the pride of empires long past, and its high ceiling shimmered with simulated constellation stars most of them had never seen. Alexander Rowe sat in the far left section, 3 rows behind the main delegation podium, wearing the navy blue uniform of a human liaison officer. No rank, no weapons. Just the polite insignia of a species that had learned to smile while being kicked out. The voices in the chamber droned on, layered in diplomatic jargon and quiet contempt. The vote was already decided. The speech was formality. Non-compliance with Article 47 subsection 9 of Military Transparency Protocols is, and must remain, grounds for sanction, said Councillor Sale of the Creel Dominion, his mandibles clicking with every syllable. Sanctions. For withholding one defense algorithm. One protocol buried so deep in Earth's defense network that even most human officials didn't know what it did. But the Council had demanded it, like they demanded everything else. Earth had shared fusion reactor designs, medical nanofields, global climate stabilizers, and still it wasn't enough. Not until they had every wire, every code, every key. Alexander kept his eyes on the speaker, but he wasn't really listening. He was watching the others. The Drankari representative shifted in his seat, tail flicking with anticipation. They'd been waiting for this. Of all the species in the chamber, the Drankari hated humans the most. Cold-blooded, literal-minded, and steeped in centuries of caste-based pride, they saw humans as evolutionary accidents, monkeys that had stumbled into the stars. When the final vote was cast, the chamber lights dimmed to signal completion. By majority consensus intoned. The Central AI, the species of Earth, are hereby sanctioned for breach of trust and withholding critical defense data. All orbital oversight will be transferred to the Drankari Security Command effective immediately. There it was. A clean diplomatic sentence. A knife slipped between the ribs. Alexander felt the eyes on him. Curious glances, some mocking. A few very. Few concerned, but most were dismissive. After all, he was just a liaison. A symbolic appointment. Earth's obedient shadow. He stood up without speaking and exited the chamber. The hallway outside was quieter, colder. A flock of Avex diplomats passed him, wings fluttering, whispering in their melodic tongue. He didn't look at them. He walked. Straight to the private room assigned to human personnel, just a small cube lit by a single low strip of white. He sat down, keyed in the diplomatic access code, and waited. The screen blinked once, then twice, then showed an error. Transmission. Unavailable. Earth channel offline. He entered another code. A direct route to the Terran consulate. Same error. He tried once more, this time through the coalition's backup diplomatic spine. Nothing. Alexander leaned back slowly. No alarm, no flashing alerts. Just quiet confirmation. Earth had gone dark. No warnings. No messages. No outraged. Just silence. He stared at the black screen and for the first time in years allowed a smile to crack the corners of his lips. It wasn't joy. It was something deeper. Something colder. They had no idea what they had just done. The Council's official response to Earth's silence was diplomatic concern. Carefully worded in sanitized communiques and circulated through secure networks. But underneath the flowery language and holographic smiles, one truth spread like a virus through every delegation on Echelon Prime. Earth had vanished. Not evacuated, not severed, not at war. Just gone. For the first 48 hours, the Council pretended it was a technical failure, solar interference. Magnetic drift. A freak relay outage in the Sol system. They called in technicians, scanners, proxy relays. Nothing responded. Earth's orbital satellites stopped pinging. Their research outposts ceased data uploads. All interstellar trade hubs bearing Terran transponders dropped off the network. A species that had once lit up 100 channels now showed zero movement, zero traffic, zero presence. It wasn't silence. It was subtraction. Alexander Rowe watched it all unfold from the margins. Technically still a liaison officer, though no one sent him orders anymore. He had no access to Earth, no way to report in, and no authority. Yet the Council didn't remove him. Not yet. He had become something worse than irrelevant. He had become interesting. The first recon fleet, launched on day 3, 5 capital ships, 12 cruisers, and a swarm of over 50 fighter state-of-the-art vessels from 5 core species, were sent to investigate, to verify, to reassure the galaxy that Earth wasn't doing anything concerning. It was a show of force wrapped in the guise of diplomacy. They never came back. The ships passed into the Sol system. The last transmission was a standard arrival beacon. After that, nothing. No distress call. No visuals. Not even wreckage. They were just erased. The Council called it an anomalous gravitational event. Something about latent black hole. Residue from the Oort belt. A fluctuation in hyperspace geometry. They rolled out diagrams and charts, did press briefings, made promises to families. But Alexander had seen the classified diagnostics before he was locked out. There was no anomaly. Every sensor reading before final transmission was normal. Every scan had shown a dormant system, no ships, no energy spikes, no threats. But something had happened. Something that took 5 of their strongest ships and wiped them like chalk from slate. By day 5, things shifted. The Council stopped speaking. Publicly, internal networks were rerouted. Delegates began holding closed-door sessions guarded by species-specific military units. Word spread fast. Whispers filled the corridors. No one said the word attack, but they didn't have to. Alexander moved like a ghost through the spire. No one addressed him, not directly. But everywhere he went, he felt it, eyes on him, hands resting just a little too long near weapons. Voices falling silent as he passed. One evening, just past the 3rd sleep cycle, a courier from the Corn Syndicate brushed by him in a maintenance corridor and slipped a note into his palm. No digital message. No audio. Just ink on fiber. He waited until he was alone to open it. What did you do to them? No signature. No threat. Just that one line. Alexander stared at the words for a long time before folding the note neatly and burning it in the disposal unit. That same night, all remaining Terran consulates were shuttered. Across 50 planets and stations, Earth's embassies closed their doors. No announcement, no goodbye. The personnel didn't leave, they disappeared. Offices were found empty, computers wiped. Personal effects gone. In some places, it was as if no human had ever been there. The Council tried to explain it away. Voluntary. Withdrawal. Earth's right to seclusion. Cultural dissonance. But no one believed it. Not really, because what Earth was doing didn't feel like retreat. It felt like prelude. By day 7, the first off-world Earth research facility, the Hadrix Terraforming Annex on Zeta 9, vanished. The station had been jointly operated. Half Earth engineers, half Visari observers. The Visari survivors claimed it was sabotage, that the humans had sabotaged the core and triggered a collapse, but Alexander received an untraceable message in his personal data node. A simple file with raw sensor footage. There was no explosion. There was precision. The station's fusion core was remotely triggered, shut down in stages so fast the AI didn't register an attack. Then the remaining systems were turned against themselves, folding inward. Not a blast. Not destruction. A surgical deletion. Only the Visari section had remained, and written on the wall of the central command deck, scorched by plasma, were 7 words. You drew first blood. Earth answers last. Alexander didn't sleep that night. He stood by the window of his tower quarters, watching the slow spin of Echelon Prime sky. Dozens of ships passed overhead, blinking silently. And yet he felt the weight of something massive approaching, something deeper than war, darker than vengeance. Not noise. Not fire. Calculation. Earth had stopped playing nice. And now the galaxy would learn what humans were like when they stopped smiling. The morning after the Hadrix Annex disappeared, the Galactic Council's emergency chamber was packed wall to wall. Delegates from over 70 species gathered not out of diplomacy, but fear. The air in the chamber crackled with tension, eyes darting, translators flickering, guards twitching at every shadow. There were no ceremonial rogues, no holographic flags rippling in coated winds. Only tight uniforms, closed expressions, and the unspoken question burning behind every glance. Who was next? Archon Telmer of the Amphic Coalition struck his gavel once more for ritual than authority. His normally booming voice was restrained. The loss of Hadrix is a tragedy. A sabotage. We believe. One that he didn't finish. The central chamber's lights cut mid-sentence. Not to darkness. No council system failed that sloppily, but to blood-red emergency mode. A synchronized alarm whispered through the air. Not a siren, just a tone. Measured, deliberate, a heartbeat of war. Alexander Rowe was already on his feet. He knew that tone. He remembered it from Earth's early warning drills. It was the signal used when diplomatic networks had been fully compromised. When all safeguards had failed, a council technician sprinted through the side door, face pale, eyes wide, data. Pad shaking in his grip. We lost Varick Station 12. Entire outpost gone. No distress signal, no com logs, just gone. And this was left behind. He activated the projector. The air shimmered. A simple message appeared, white text on. Black. You erased Titan. We remember. Alexander's breath hitched. Titan. The refugee station orbiting Saturn's moon. 11 days after the Drankari were given control over Earth's orbital defense grid, that station had been hit by a kinetic rod accidentally fired during a system test. 2,000 lives lost, mostly children, mostly human. The Drankari called it a malfunction. Earth never responded publicly. Until now. The chamber descended into chaos. The Drankari ambassador snarled, hurling accusations of propaganda and misinformation. The Visari delegation demanded a formal inquiry. The Korn Syndicate whispered about staging fleet exercises near Earth-adjacent trade lanes, but Alexander wasn't listening. Because in that message, he recognized something worse than retaliation. Memory. Earth hadn't just struck back. It had been waiting. A slow, deliberate build of silence. A century of humiliation, sanctions, mockery, subjugation dressed as civility. And then, when the line was finally crossed, when Earth's blood was spilled with a wink and a shrug, it didn't roar. It remembered. A fey. Council-wide blackout followed 30 minutes later, not planetary. Not defensive. Archival. Historical logs. Across the council network were corrupted. Databases flickered. Files vanished. Not all just enough. Just enough to make everyone unsure of what was missing. Just enough to remind them that Earth had written many of those systems. Alexander ran to his quarters. His personal datapad was intact, encrypted to Terran protocol. He activated a hidden subroutine embedded years ago, back when Earth still believed diplomacy had a future. A secure line opened. No visuals. Just a voice, female, calm, dry, You still in place, Ro? Yes. Then watch and wait. Don't speak unless spoken. T. Why now? He asked. Why not years ago? A pause. Because they had to believe we were weak. Now they believe we were patient. The line cut. At that same hour, 3 council border listening posts stopped transmitting. In perfect unison. No explosions. No sabotage. No evidence. Just empty silence. Every council ship near Earth systems began reporting phantom signals. Their navigational A struggled to sync jump coordinates. Hyperspace gates flickered, stalled, and then reset. Ships were rerouted. Diplomats delayed. Cargo lost. Markets wavered. Nothing overt. Nothing Earth could be blamed for. Just the feeling of a slow hand wrapping around the galaxy's throat. 2 days later, a council science vessel picked up a relay, broadcast from an abandoned sector near the fringe. An audio. Message. Human. Male. Mid-30s. Accent neutral. This is not an invasion. This is not a war. This is an audit. For 86 years you ruled while Earth complied. You took our peace, our medicine, our technology, and returned scorn. When we asked for dignity, you gave us sanctions. When we asked for mercy, you gave U.S. silence. And when we asked to protect just one secret, you sent monsters into our sky. Now we send you ghosts. We won't conquer you. We'll remind you of every wound, of every slight, of every time you looked at Earth and saw prey instead of partners. The message looped for 39 seconds. After that, every species in N. The council began calling emergency summits. They weren't planning defenses. They were scrambling to remember what they'd done to Earth and whether any of it had been forgiven. Alexander stood in his chamber, still wearing the same uniform. Still technically a liaison, but that word had no meaning anymore, because Earth had stopped knocking. And had started listening. The day the Hadrix message loop stopped playing, something colder took its place. No declaration, no threats, no blood, just a single-frame broadcast across every diplomatic channel in council space, an image of the Earth from low orbit, backlit by the sun, serene and distant. Below it, in crisp galactic standard, was a caption. We were never tame, just patient. It was enough to make 5 species declare internal lockdowns within the hour. In the high chamber of Echelon Prime, the Council's core delegates, those who had once sat in gilded authority, who had once dismissed Earth as a clever but crude upstart, now met behind reinforced walls and private encryption. But even in their war rooms, they weren't safe, because the real war had already started, not with weapons. With data. Across 3 sectors, Council trade routes collapsed into chaos. Earth origin AI assistants embedded in economic systems for decades began glitching in ways that didn't look accidental. Inventory mismatches, invisible fees, fractional losses that compounded into market collapse. Cargo ships with pristine logs arrived at stations missing 4% of their goods. The missing amounts varied by region, by system, by species, but the sum. Loss aggregated over 48 hours, 97 billion Council standard credits. Gone. Wiped, not stolen. Not traceable. Erased. And then came the message. A private memo, leaked anonymously, not by Earth, but by someone inside the Council itself. It contained a single sentence. You outsourced your infrastructure to a species that learned war before it learned peace. Alexander Rowe read that message in silence, his fingers trembling slightly. Not from fear. Not yet. From confirmation. He had known this moment would come. They all had any human who'd spent more than a month in council space. The sneers. The subtle segregation. The passive humiliation dressed in diplomacy, but Earth had waited and waited. And now, The mask was off. He sat alone in his old liaison suite, which had gone from ceremonial to strategic by default. No guards, no restrictions. Because no one wanted to touch him anymore. Like he was radiation. A symptom of something too big to contain. His datapad vibrated coded signal. Same Earth channel as before. Same voice. We're ready. He responded with a single word. Execute. Elsewhere, the ARC protocol lit up. The Council didn't know about the ARC protocol. Not the real one. They believed it to be a myth-human survivalist paranoia. An emergency failsafe in case Earth was ever invaded. Maybe a hidden colony ship network. Nothing serious. They were wrong. The ARCs weren't ships. They were triggers. Embedded programs. Long dormant, seeded into the very bones of Council infrastructure terraforming. Grids, orbital traffic lanes, power regulators, fleet synchronization arrays. All designed by humans over the last 50 years. And now, awakened. Not to destroy, but to reveal, one by one, across 27 core worlds, the facade cracked. Ships refused docking requests. Station atmospheres shifted to hostile pressures. Emergency. Lights activated in Council chambers without reason. Holodisplays blinked into human language before resetting. Entire cities lost access to their own transportation grids as mag rails rerouted themselves into empty loops. None of it fatal. All of it deliberate. And in every affected system, a file appeared, titled simply, What You Stole. Inside were logs, dates, names, records of everything the Council had ever extracted from Earth intellectual property, cultural, artifacts, medical patents claimed under shared development, even footage archived sessions of Earth delegates being mocked, overruled, ridiculed. A diplomatic museum of abuse. And the final clip? Titan, not the public footage. Not the Council's clean-cut version, the raw feed, the Drankari ship aligning. Its trajectory, the calculated launch of a kinetic rod, the explosion, and the screams. Thousands of them. The Council chambers fell into chaos. Alexander watched it all unfold on his secure feed, sitting in silence as the weight of truth crashed down on those who once lectured Earth about morality. They didn't understand the attack, because there wasn't one. Earth hadn't struck. It had documented. And now it was letting the galaxy judge itself. 3 member species declared neutrality the next day. The Visari broke off diplomatic ties with the Drankari. The Corn Syndicate froze shared assets. And the trade councils began discussing the unthinkable. That maybe Earth had a point. That maybe the Council had crossed a line long ago. And through it all, Alexander moved quietly, unseen, untouched. Not because he had power, because the galaxy had finally realized what he represented. Not a diplomat, not a liaison, a warning. And now, the real war was about to begin, not with fleets, but with memory. The dawn of the 5th week didn't come with explosions. It came with a hum, not audible to most species, not even detected by standard Council instruments. But the human-engineered infrastructure deep within the core of Council systems heard. It felt it. A pulse through encrypted lattice, a synchronized vibration across systems Earth had graciously helped design. It was the signal. Not for war, for disarmament. In less than 2 hours, entire networks across the Council's security grid began rerouting their own protocols. Defense satellites turned to face blind sectors. Border sentries rebooted into diagnostics. Loops. Power matrices glitched just long enough for prison gates to open, for sensor nets to go dark, for military staging routes to fragment. No deaths. No visible enemy. Just paralysis. And in that paralysis, a realization began to set in. Earth had never been integrated into the Council. Earth had integrated the Council into itself. By mid-cycle, 47 Planetary A is reported emergency failsafe. Locks, navigation paths were corrupted across 8 trade corridors. And at the heart of it all, the flagship station in the Krellin Nexus, used by over 200 species, suffered a cascading systems collapse. Its central core screen blinked once and showed a message. We gave you the sky. Now we take back the stars. Alexander. Rowe watched it happen from a hidden chamber deep within Echelon Prime. No guards now. No surveillance. They'd stopped monitoring him days ago. He was no longer a threat to contain. He was a consequence to observe. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Because he knew what was coming next. At 1700 Universal Time, the spire lights flickered once, twice, then went black. Total shutdown. Red emergency strips lit the walls in a heartbeat glow. Some thought it was a power failure, but Alexander saw the truth in the silence. Earth had entered the building. A lone technician, Visari, barely of age, stumbled into the chamber, gasping. Clutching a data rod. He slid it into the terminal. Every screen lit up with a live feed. Nada. Speech. Not another recording. A face. Male. Late 50s. Stern. Unblinking. Dressed in simple black. No medals. No flags. Just a small Earth insignia behind him. The same symbol that once flew quietly at the back of every council summit. And when he spoke, the voice carried not rage but cold precision. You have mistaken mercy for weakness. He waited, letting the words settle like ash. For decades, Earth complied. You asked. We gave. You mocked. We endured. You took. We allowed. Because we believed peace was earned by restraint. That the wounds of our past had taught us humility. But you mistook silence for surrender. You mistook patience for servitude. You mistook hope for submission. The chamber remained still. No one dared to breathe. You drew first blood above Titan, and we gave you 5 weeks to remember what came before your peace. The screen shifted. Council archives filled the feed. Earth's wars, its resurrections. Nuclear fire. Flood. Collapse. Rebirth. Terran history laid bare, not sanitized, not prettified. We did not survive the end of our world twice just to bow at your table. Then the screen showed the arcs, massive constructs, silent, unreachable, hidden in deep orbit, cloaked in distortion fields and quantum noise. Entire ecosystems housed inside artificial moons. Launched decades ago. You planned to rule. We planned to outlive you. Alexander's breath caught. The ARC protocol wasn't just an escape plan. It was an evolution. The man on the screen leaned forward slightly. This is not a declaration of war. This is the end of the illusion that we were ever yours to govern. We will not occupy. We will not conquer. We will simply vanish. And in our absence, you will remember what we were. And what you are without us. The feed cut. The silence that followed wasn't stunned. It was shattered. Some delegates rose. Others wept. A few simply left, and in that hollow chamber of once great powers, Alexander stood not to speak, but to watch. Because he knew something they didn't. This wasn't Earth's endgame. This was Phase 1. And the galaxy had just been invited to survive it. The Council fell quiet in the weeks that followed, not because Earth had silenced them, but because they had nothing left to say. There were no more diplomatic statements, no more press releases spinning losses as anomalies. What could they claim? Now? That the navigation disruptions across 3 quadrants were natural. That Earth's message, broadcast through every encrypted relay from Echelon Prime to the Theraxis Expanse, had been faked? They knew the truth. Everyone did. Earth had stopped playing nice, but they still didn't understand what that meant. Because Earth hadn't invaded. It hadn't fired a single shot. It had simply Vanished. Trade hubs reliant on Terran technology reported total system failures. Agricultural worlds once stabilized by Earth's climate grid began to suffer ecological collapse. Med chambers powered by Earth's neural fusion tech began rebooting endlessly, unable to reconnect to home servers that no longer existed. Entire colonies, some built on Earth's terraforming templates, now faced atmospheric destabilization. Communications blinked in and out. Some systems worked, but only partially, like machines missing a central spine. Every time a repair team tried to isolate the cause, they uncovered Earth-coded algorithms, recursive, adaptive, and now locked. And as the Council scrambled, panicked, begged for old blueprints, and whispered in backrooms about salvaging the Alliance, Earth did something worse than attack. It watched, from the shadows, from the arcs, from the deep black where no signal could reach. Alexander Rowe moved through the failing machinery of the Council's skeleton like a man walking through his own dream turned memory turned tomb. The liaison badge he once wore was gone. No one needed to label him anymore. Everyone knew what he was now. The last one. The last known Terran in Council space. No orders came from home. No messages. Just that still silence. That awful, echoing certainty that Earth was now the ghost haunting every console, every meeting, every breath. But Earth wasn't done. On the 74th day, it escalated. Not with violence. With truth. Across every major Council world, encoded packages unlocked themselves simultaneously, files hidden for decades, buried in archives that only Earth-built systems could read. And now they activated not to destroy, but to reveal. They showed what the Council had done, the secret sterilization of minor species for resource optimization, the medical experiments on fringe worlds using unauthorized human tech, the embezzlement of Earth's patents, repackaged and sold as joint developments. They showed Titan, unedited. They showed how long Earth had begged for restraint, and how often they were mocked for it. The galaxy watched in horror, not just at what the Council had done, but at what Earth had tolerated. For nearly a century, humanity had borne the weight of condescension, theft, even slaughter. And now it was returning that weight. Not as fire. As exposure. The first collapse came from within. The Visari, long loyal to the Council's core, turned on their own Senate within a week. The Korn Syndicate declared neutrality and sealed its gates. The Drankari military splintered after one of their own generals defected, bringing with him hundreds of Earth-enhanced systems and a single message. You thought we were gods. We were the warning. Panic spread faster than fire. Trade collapsed. Alliances shattered. Pirate fleets once held at bay by Earth's silent protection now ran wild across the Threx belt. Civil unrest ignited on 17 worlds in 5 days. Council beacons lit up with desperate calls for guidance, and Earth? It said nothing. Alexander received his first direct message in over 2 months. It came as a whisper through a locked channel, only he still remembered. No image. Just a voice. Cold, precise, mail. Phase 2 is complete. Prepare for withdrawal. He didn't answer right away. He stood on the rooftop of the old embassy tower, staring out at the capital's skyline. Fires dotted the lower districts. Transports fled silently toward the outer rim, and yet in all that chaos, the stars above looked exactly the same. He keyed in his reply. Is this it? Are we done? The voice returned after a moment. No. Now we let them remember what the galaxy was like before Earth. Let them feel that emptiness. Let them rot in the silence they earned. And just like that, the channel died. 3 hours later, Alexander disappeared from Echelon Prime. Not killed. Not arrested. Gone. His quarters were found empty. His IDEN code deleted. His ship, a low-orbit civilian shuttle, never logged a departure. rumors spread quickly that he'd been extracted by Earth. That he was Earth. That he was a signal, the last living warning of what happens when humanity stops playing diplomat and starts playing architect. Some said they saw him one last time on the council tower's top deck, standing silently, looking up at the stars. No one could confirm it, but months later, when the spire itself collapsed in a systems implosion that left nothing but ash and data rot, a single phrase was recovered from the wreckage, burned into the command wall. We were the peace. You mistook us for silence. They thought Earth had finished its statement, that the silence was the endgame, that humanity had withdrawn into some bitter exile, content to let the galaxy unravel in its absence. And for a while, that illusion held. Systems flickered but didn't fall. Trade limped along. The remaining council species whispered among themselves, licking wounds and weighing futures. Then came the voice, not from Earth, from a world they hadn't spoken of in months. Her axis. A minor civilization by all original. Council metrics. 4 habitable planets, limited orbital strength, elegant in culture but backward in tech. They had refused Earth's reconstruction packages after the council collapsed, choosing instead to rebuild with their own tools at their own pace. Had been a footnote, now they were a flare. The message originated from a deep space relay unregistered, old, probably pre-council. A rough signal, barely patched together. And yet, it burned through every firewall in the quadrant like a knife through silk. We are still here. No demands, no threats, just a voice. A woman's voice. Measured. Unafraid. It was Thal Prime, executive of Heraxis, a name the galaxy had forgotten. Until now. In that 6-word message, something began to shift. Not in the sky, not in machines. In minds. Across border systems, broken colonies, and independent stations barely holding together, whispers surged. If Heraxis could defy Earth and survive, maybe others could too. The Council hadn't fallen to war. It had disintegrated under the weight of its own shame. But Earth had filled the vacuum with something colder. Controlled. Economic, digital, infrastructural. A quiet empire. One that now showed cracks. Alexander Rowe, long since vanished from official records, picked up the Heraxis transmission from the shadow. Net orbiting Nexus Arc 3. He listened to it 5 times before speaking a word. His face was harder now, thinner. His voice rasped with silence and too many truths. She said it out loud. He whispered. A voice behind him spoke. Calm, machine smoothed, human designed. She broke protocol. No, Alexander muttered. She broke the illusion. Within 48 hours, Earth's shadow infrastructure began pulsing with new activity. Emergency memos circulated across black site arcs. Advisors embedded in ex-council colonies were recalled. Civilian monitoring agents were told to triple their attention on any Heraxis-linked signals. Phase 3 had not been planned for this soon. But Earth never let a narrative slip through its fingers for long. Alexander was pulled from Deep Watch, then flown in silence to Arc Nexus 1, the nerve center of Earth's hidden reach. A place few even knew existed, where entire regions of the galaxy were managed like chessboards, and failure was not corrected, it was erased. He entered the chamber and found them waiting. Not commanders. Not politicians. Architects. The ones who didn't wear names or insignia. The ones who had overseen Earth's transformation from mocked member to quiet master. A man older, slate-gray eyes, pale skin like marble turned to him. We have a problem, he said. Heraxis, Alexander replied. No, the man corrected. Hope, he tapped a holomap. Red zones blinked across council space remnants. Trade delays. Coordinated local resistances. Communication jamming traced. To ancient relay systems Earth no longer controlled. They're spreading the idea that Earth can be defied. And can it? Alexander asked. Silence. Not offense. Not doubt. Just thought. Then the answer came. It doesn't matter. The idea itself is the infection. A new directive was issued. Not annihilation. Not yet. Suffocation. Her access systems were digitally flagged, trade rerouted, communication protocols overwritten. Diplomatic requests from her Axis-linked worlds were returned with blank screens. All mentions of the name Heraxis were scrubbed from coalition databases. Even ship registries began to error out when attempting to dock near their systems. Heraxis was being turned into a ghost. Alexander watched from the shadows. Not involved, not removed. Just watching. It wasn't military. It wasn't dramatic. It was erasure by silence. But Thal did not blink. Her axis disconnected itself voluntarily from every galactic relay they stopped responding to. Earth altogether. No pleas. No rebellion. Just silence and return. And Earth, master of silence, found itself suddenly listening, not to threats. To defiance. In the Council's ruins, other species began whispering what they hadn't dared to for decades. If Heraxis was still standing, what else could stand? Could Earth be outrun? Outweighted? Outlived? It wasn't a rebellion yet, but it was a crack, a single fissure in Earth's perfect control. And in the dark places between stars, long-forgotten frequencies whispered the same 6 words: "We are still here. Remember us." Alexander sat alone in his quarters aboard Arcnexus 1, staring into the infinite black outside. He knew what Earth would do next, what it had to do. And for the first time since Titan, he wasn't sure if he could be part of it. Because Heraxis hadn't started a war. They'd started a memory. And in a galaxy ruled by silence, memory was treason. The purge order came coded. Just a thin sliver of text embedded in a secure stream between 2 anonymous relay points in the black, wrapped in 6 layers of encryption and timed to self-erase within 5 seconds of being opened. Alexander wrote. Didn't open it. He didn't have to. He'd seen the directive before, buried in the classified protocols during his final year of active command. It was known internally as Clause VNTA. It meant one thing. Heraxis was no longer an ideological problem. It was a contagion, and contagions were to be eliminated quietly, thoroughly, and without a single survivor left to speak. Arcnexus 1 didn't debate. It didn't vote. It executed. Within 12 hours, Heraxis orbital traffic was frozen by malfunctioning gate systems. Cargo shipments rerouted. Energy relays were jammed at the source. Communications suffered from signal drift and quantum leakage. Civilian markets crashed silently under algorithmic pressure. None of it traceable. None of it loud. It was the scalpel, not the sword. Heraxis didn't fall. They endured. Thal, the prime executive, broadcast one final message before their systems went fully dark. It wasn't a rallying cry. It was a whisper. You cannot erase what was never yours. It echoed through the deepnet like a heartbeat in vacuum. But Earth wasn't finished. Not yet. Plasvanta had a second stage. Mythic-eyed. The systematic deletion of Heraxis from memory. Not destruction. Obliteration. Files rewritten. Historical records scrubbed, linguistic databases modified, planetary registries voided. Heraxis was to become a name that didn't raise eyebrows, because it would raise nothing at all. And yet, the name refused to die. Somewhere in the back alleys of Fringe, worlds that kept appearing, carved into bulkhead walls, slipped into firmware updates, burned into crashed relay cores. One phrase, repeating over and over, like a virus that infected the collective consciousness: Earth can be defied. Alexander sat in silence, within a dormant forward observatory orbiting the old Jutari fringe. Outside his viewport, a drifting freighter tumbled lifeless through the void, its navigation lights flickering in a pattern he almost didn't recognize. 3 long. 2 short. 3 long. Old Terran Morse, still here. He closed his eyes. Claus Vanna had spread too far. Too fast. Haraxis wasn't dead. It had become legend. Earth's greatest weapon, silence, had failed because someone else had learned to wield it. In the months that followed, Earth tightened its grip on the remaining systems. Trade networks restructured. AI dependencies hardened. Whisper agents dispatched to suppress rebellion before it began, but they couldn't stop the effing stop the Whisper. It didn't organize. It didn't protest. It simply existed. In poems, in graffiti, in broken ship logs and anonymous data leaks. In the unspoken dread behind every advisor's stare when someone asked, "What happened to Haraxis?" One day, an Earth-appointed economic overseer on Draxus Prime received a shipment of outdated nav charts. Useless data. Just garbage. Except for one file. A child's voice. Soft. Innocent. They took our name, but not our memory. Alexander heard it too, played it over and over, like an old hymn from a broken home. He didn't report it. He didn't purge it. Listen. Then one morning, a message appeared in his personal system, a channel that should have been buried, a link to a relay that no longer existed, a voice, Fal's voice, not broken. Calm. Resolute. You were one of us once, before they made you forget. If you're still in there, if there's still a human beneath the silence, remember. It ended there. No command. No accusation. Just the challenge of memory. Alexander didn't respond. He couldn't. Not yet. But that night, he walked past one of the junior archivists aboard Nexus 1 and whispered, "How do you kill an echo?" The archivist didn't answer, because everyone aboard knew the truth. By now, you don't. You can bury it, drown it in silence, strangle it with fear, but once it's heard, it never stops repeating. The galaxy didn't explode. It fractured. And not with warships or orbital bombardments, but with hesitation, tiny ruptures in loyalty that spread like cracks in the ice before a lake gives way beneath your feet. The Haraxis message, buried alive by Earth's silence, had been exhumed by whispers. Whispers that bled into com channels, into trade manifests, into idle conversation over ration packs in deep space mess halls. Whispers that weren't loud enough to stop Earth's dominion, but loud enough to make people wonder, had Earth gone too far? And once that question took root, it refused to die. Earth responded with what it always did, precision, strategic blackouts in fringe territories. Licensing restrictions disguised as algorithmic calibration. Advisors who once brought trade efficiency now began redirecting entire economic arteries toward Earth-backed systems. Colonies that questioned Earth's grip found themselves unable to refuel. Councils that debated independence watched their AI networks crash during the vote. Still, the message spread. We are still here. Earth can be defied. One by one, unaligned stations quietly dropped their Earth-affiliated optimization protocols. Fringe planets began trading on analog systems. Others regressed to barter, terrified of Earth's reach through data, but unwilling to remain compliant. In deep orbit over the dead colony of Halex Prime, a broadcast was intercepted, garbled, nearly lost, a child's voice familiar, repeating the phrase again, "We are not yours." Arc Nexus 1 marked the system as red-level contamination. 2 hours later, the colony's orbital station lost pressure in all compartments. The cause, synthetic membrane fatigue. No survivors. No investigation. Alexander Rowe stood alone in the observation chamber above Nexus 1's command vault, watching the ship logs update with mechanical precision. Another ghosted system. Another flicker erased. The silence felt different now. It wasn't peace. It was numbness. The kind that follows after a scream you didn't want to hear, and certainly didn't want to answer. He turned as the door hissed open. The commander, no name, just title, entered, flanked by two silent strategists. "I've reviewed your logs," the commander said. "Your exposure to the Haraxis signal concerns the Directorate." Alexander didn't flinch. It was an echo. Just data. "You let it live." "Not my call." It was. Silence stretched between them like a drawn wire. The strategist to the left, younger, eyes too still, stepped forward and offered a data pad. "We need you to go back in. Deep rotation. Isolate the remaining echoes. Clean them. Leave nothing." Alexander looked down at the pad. Dozens of flagged systems. Dozens of names, some of them familiar, some of them still alive. "You want me to erase what's left," he said quietly. The commander nodded once. "Not for vengeance. For continuity." That word, continuity, a polite synonym for obedience. Alexander took the datapad, didn't agree, didn't argue, just walked out. The mission began 3 days later. Station 9, Cradle Dust Outpost, Red Verge Terminal. Each location fed the same story. Coded graffiti, mismatched frequencies, tiny breaches in Earth's neural sovereignty. But when Alexander arrived at the abandoned listening post on Vanter's grave, he found something different. A person, old, scarred, sitting by a campfire, like he was waiting for a storm that hadn't come yet. "You're late," the man said. Alexander stared. "You were a Titan," he said slowly. The man nodded. "So were you." They didn't say anything for a long time. Just listened to the wind rattle through broken walls. "You know what this place is?" the man asked. "A ruin." "No," he smiled faintly. "It's the memory of a world that was told to forget. That's all any of us are now, memories Earth couldn't delete." Alexander sat down, and for the first time since Nexus 1 burned Haraxis from the galaxy, he felt something crack in his chest. Not betrayal, not rebellion, remorse. That night, he didn't send coordinates back. He turned off his locator, burned the datapad, began writing longhand. On paper, his first report in years. Not for Earth, for anyone still listening. "The silence is breaking. The cracks are speaking. And I am starting to remember what it meant to be human." Earth didn't know yet, but the first fracture had become a fault line, and the memory it couldn't kill was waking. The first broadcast to shatter Earth's control didn't come from a known relay. It came from a grave, a forgotten, rusted relay buried in a decaying orbital ring around a dead gas giant, long since written off as debris. The Council had abandoned it decades ago. Earth had never indexed it, but someone had kept it alive. A single voice crackled through every deep-knit channel still untouched by Earth's grip. "Rough, unrefined, raw. Alexander Rowe. I am no longer a liaison, no longer a shadow. I was Earth's witness, its instrument, and its silence, and I let that silence bury the truth." He paused, voice shaking not with fear, but with something rarer. Conviction. Haraxis was erased. Not because it fought back, but because it remembered. Because it told others that obedience was not survival, it was extinction of the soul. You call Earth a savior. You call us bringers of order. But I've seen what we've become. The feed cut momentarily, then returned with a new signal. Video. Inside a chamber of Arc Nexus 1. Command tier. A still image. The commander. Dead. Slumped over a console. A bloodless breach to the side of his head. Eyes still open. This was not rebellion, Alexander's voice returned. It was mercy. He knew. He saw it coming, and the machine we built devoured him. Panic spread faster than Earth's countermeasures could contain it. Within minutes, the broadcast flooded thousands of systems. The mask had slipped. And Earth, for the first time in over a century, had no response. Strategic A is locked into recursive failsafes. Whisper agents went dark. Economic supervisors disconnected en masse. The architecture of control was too vast to reboot all at once, and that's when the truth landed like a thunderclap. Earth hadn't designed an empire. It had built a machine. One, powered not by warships or weapons, but by trust. Not the galaxy's trust. Its own. Every arc, every protocol, every operation. All bound to the belief that Earth could do no wrong. That it knew better, but now, one of its architects had broken rank, and the virus wasn't code. It was conscience. In the following days, minor colonies rose not with weapons, but with words. Old stations lit up with Haraxis signals long since suppressed, messages carved into satellite hulls, physical books smuggled across black roots. One phrase again and again: you can't rule memory. Earth responded the only way it could: systematically. It shut down comlines, jammed unregistered relays, flooded the net with disinformation, but it was too late because it didn't matter which messages were fake anymore. People were asking questions, and the fear was no longer of Earth. It was of truth. At Nexus 5, one of the deepest arc cores, a quiet mutiny occurred. An engineer, Zara Velen, disabled the relay scramblers for 6 seconds, long enough for 27 outlaw systems to link. They didn't coordinate an uprising. They shared stories, first-hand accounts. What Earth did, what it hid, what it erased. On Juno's Gate, a former Earth-aligned colony, the populace replaced their central AI with a Haraxis shard. It was slower, less accurate, but it told them the truth. On Veltrix Prime, a transport hub, a mural appeared overnight on the eastern wall of the governor's tower. No signature. No crew caught painting it. Just 6 words. We are not enemies, just free. That same night, Alexander sent one final message. Not through the DEEPNE. Through Open Spectrum. Broad and bright and undeniable. To the Directorate. I know you're listening. I'm not calling for your end. I'm calling for your memory, the one you abandoned, the one you buried beneath control and silence. Earth was never meant to be a god. It was meant to be a home. But you turned it into a shadow, and shadows don't lead. They follow. Then he closed the channel. And vanished. Again. His ship was later found drifting near the edge of a Class 9 gravity well, empty, no log entries. No coordinates. Just a datapad left behind in the pilot's chair. One entry, a single quote. They built silence into a weapon. We turned it back into a voice. Across the galaxy, fractures deepened, but something else began growing in those cracks. Not rebellion, not war. Hope, a quiet, ragged, defiant hope. That maybe, just maybe, memory could survive machinery. And in the dark corners of the stars, people began saying a phrase that once would have gotten them killed. Earth doesn't own us. They didn't chant it. They whispered it, which made it even louder. Back on Earth, in a control chamber buried beneath kilometers of hardened steel and data, an anonymous figure watched the spread of the signal. Watched as colonies disconnected. Watched as the echo grew. They didn't speak. Didn't move. Just sat back in their chair and watched the stars turn red. Then said one thing: let it burn. But the echo had already moved on, because Earth had taught the galaxy silence, and Haraxis had taught it something more dangerous: how to speak again.